Hello, friends, and welcome to Worldbuild with us, the podcast where we create fantastical worlds with help from you, our listeners. My name is Rob Hilferty, and I'm here with my co-hosts Daniel Quinn and Courtney Staples. On today's episode, we celebrate our 5th whole year of podcasting. That's right, 5 beautiful years of running the Worldbuild with Us podcast. And today, we're going to be doing a world building jam with updated random elements. So, before we get into that, this is not a usual episode. And if you want us to build your world, you can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, where you can click the link, follow the instructions, and within a reasonable amount of time, we can be building your world. And even before we get into the episode proper, like I said at the very top, guys, it is 5 years into World Build with us. And I just wanted to stop and say thank you to all of the listeners for your support, for your prompts, and just all the feedback that we get from all of you, all the emails, all the Discord messages, each and every one of you. The podcast would not be here without you. And I wanted to say thank you all very much for your continued support, especially our patrons who have been there for a long time. Or if you're a new patron, we just really appreciate you showing love and support to us financially, because we are kind of stuck in this system as is. Anyway, anyone, whether it's financially supported or not, thank you so much for your listening. Truly, it has been an amazing 5 years. And sappy messaging aside, it is time to get into our world building jam. And a huge thank you to one Daniel Quinn for getting us a new master subgenre list, which we'll be using. It has a grand total of 83 different subgenres, some of which I don't even know. So let's start us off. We're going to start by rolling our first massive subgenre, which is going to be team superheroes. That TEAM superheroes. So I'm assuming it's a bunch of superheroes in a team. That's probably my guess there. Our theme is going to be creation, and our focus for this time is going to be something brand new. Now, before we get into this, my challenge is not the creation of a new team. That seems perhaps too easy. And also, I'm going to say, can we do something that isn't the creation of a new type of superhero? That is something that I'm also interested in seeing if we can get around that. So, Courtney, why don't you get us started? We've got a team of superheroes with a theme of creation and a focus on something brand new.
Yeah, like you said, the obvious thing is kind of going for a creation of a new team or a new type of superpower, some sort of evolution of it. But without those aspects, I would say maybe we could go in the route of like The Boys, where it's a counter to a team of superheroes. Maybe it's a very modern setting and there's a sort of reality TV type of thing that's been introduced following superheroes around, making them less of these like godlike figures and more like, let's follow so and so on their day-to-day crime fighting whatever, and also while they sit around waiting for stuff to happen.
Yeah, I was very inspired. Like, so it's basically superheroes live streaming, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Is it a creation of a new genre of television in this team superhero world?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Oh, maybe like they wiped out like so much crime. They've been so successful at what they've done that they just need like more income, more revenue, or like they're bored or something. So it's like, well, shit, I guess we'll just stream our lives now, give ourselves weird challenges.
It's like they've created a utopia, and now the utopia has become a dystopia because there is no conflict.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, of course, the previous heroes, like they're just bored out of their fucking skulls because, well, all of the supervillains are gone, and I guess I can't wait for, a new natural disaster. So I don't know. I guess it's Samaritan work. Like, I'm here to help people fix cars that are broken down in this. I don't know, man. It's
Mhm.
like that kind of ennui and kind of pessimism, I guess.
Yeah, something like that.
There's like the opportunity for sort of Ozymandias villain, because in order to make it not a dystopia, he has to do something bad, in order to bring the heroes back to action, sort of.
Yeah. Or or
Mhm.
or wait, hold on. Maybe not do something bad, but like maybe there's a mastermind who's like, listen, if we don't have supervillains, then the superheroes are going to go so bored that they'll just become dictators. I'm creating like it's reality TV, right? Where it's manufactured drama where it's like, okay, if we don't have supervillains, the world will start to fall apart because they need conflict, right? And I think that failed utopia idea that Daniel has mixed with an Ozymandias character who's basically just like a TV producer who makes sure that heroes have things to do to keep them distracted. Or even, I mean, if you didn't want to go TV producer, like you need a GM to keep people these superheroes entertained in a certain way.
Do you guys remember Mojo? I think his name was Mojo from X-Men.
Of course I do.
No.
I've been watching X-Men 97, Daniel. Yes.
So for those unfamiliar with him, he's this horrible blob TV producer in an alternate reality. He has like a spider. He sits on like spider legs. He's just horrific monster guy.
He's so
He
cool.
like
He has such a cool design. He's got this like the robot spider like chariot that walks him around. Sorry, we obviously like have different ideas of who Mojo is, but yeah, no, he's horrible and awesome at the same time. Continue, Daniel. Apologies.
So he basically resides in this alternate reality where he's trying to film, keep his populace happy, and so he often plucks the X-Men from alternate realities for their reality, puts them into his horrible games. The new cartoon does a really fantastic job making him super fun in ways that you didn't think were possible in the old series, because they do a lot of crazy like virtual reality stuff and gaming depicted in the way he's trying to create entertainment. So I could see the supervillain having that same mentality if he's and he this and I can imagine too he's not really a supervillain in the beginning because he's just trying to create entertainment in what seems like a dull utopia, but
Mhm.
perhaps
Mm.
the manufactured violence goes too far. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that your allusion to Ozymandias is perfect because Ozymandias is a former hero who has like the best of intentions for humanity. And I think that if we have this character be a former hero who's like, look, I am the smartest person on the planet. And if we don't have conflict and drama, then, we'll have a fascist, dictatorship with fake Superman as the head or something like that. And then perhaps it degrades into, or maybe that's the original purpose, but then it degrades into I'm just trying to produce entertainment on like a kind of literal mind mush kind of level, much like reality TV.
Yeah, what I was thinking of was definitely more like low key, like following uh following them on their day-to-day, journeys, like watching them help old ladies cross the street or like uh hit up a cafe, get lattes or something, stuff like very basic relationship type of drama, um, that sort of thing.
You could ratchet it up. So you could, for example, begin as a slice of life sort of thing, which is what you're
Mhm.
describing, and have because this is also team superheroes, so it's about team dynamics and
Yeah.
interpersonal relationships, right? So you could have a lot of the drama you see in reality TV. Myself being someone who loves certain reality TV. But part of the allure of it is that you start to identify with these characters, not identify with them in the sense of like, oh, I'm like that person, but more like you identify with their fatal flaws because it's all about making yourself feel better than the shitty situation they're in. And
Yeah.
so, I imagine whatever this is shedding light on in the relationships with the heroes, maybe it starts to escalate over time, like the drama and the conflicts become more complicated. And that's
Mhm.
the influence of the quote unquote producers. I mean, this is a wonderful parallel to Vanderpump Rules, my favorite reality TV show. But, you start with people who are poor waiters serving this really wealthy ex-housewife, right? And so over the years, they become more influential and popular, and then they get a lot more money. And then by the end of it, what happens is there's not really any more drama because they have all the money in the world, and they're doing this fake kind of show. So the producers have to manufacture drama, and that's where things go wrong. So I could see that progression making sense in this world too.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I was thinking kind of the same thing where, we have the very low key stuff that Courtney's talking about, but then, for mid-season ratings or for like season finale type stuff, that's where you have, you know, big natural disasters or, like a new supervillain on the scene, something like that, where, like, oh, we need drama or actually it could just be like the ratings dip and so people start to get restless and like, quick, earthquake. We need an earthquake, like something like that, where they have like immense control, but they're also okay with things kind of being all about the drama. And honestly, if the interpersonal connections of the team get really messy, maybe that actually staves off the need for supervillains and natural disasters and stuff like that, where it's like, oh man, like there's been a months long like cheating scandal between the team, and that's like kind of kept things low key in the meantime.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I could see that too, where, you know, if things start to get too boring, then, uh, oh no, there's like a building that's under attack. People are being held hostage by terrorists all of a sudden. Crazy. Imagine the odds of that right down the street from these superheroes. Um, but otherwise, yeah, it's a lot of like interpersonal stuff, and which I also imagine could be rigged in some way, like uh, somebody getting pissed about one of their housemates repeatedly like eating their favorite food in the fridge, but it's actually like the producers coming in at night and like
Yeah.
gradually like throwing stuff away or something like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, or it's like one of those things where they cut to. So I heard that Starlight has actually been eating a lot of your food. Can you tell us about that? Like where it's one of those things where they ask incredibly leading questions and they pull it out of people. And I
Mhm.
mean, realistically, if you wanted that to be like the main supervillain hiring, like cronies who have, emotion manipulation, or, like suddenly you have people who are able to who have like very low key superpowers suddenly became a lot more important depending on where they're placed. I think that that's one of those things, or it's like, oh, you have a villain who is able to, when they ask people questions, the person responds truthfully and like bluntly, or something that's like not necessarily uh like super overt. I think that'd be kind of interesting to putz around with as well.
Yeah, like an extremely manipulative antagonist would be really interesting. Like maybe he's not even seen as a villain to people who are subject to him.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah. Well, it's all about like making sure the world is safe, making sure that these disasters don't happen, because the world's a utopia, right? And unless things, I mean, like things will go out of control unless we have our thumb on the button, so to speak.
It gives me vibes of it's a Shyamalan movie, but it's a superhero movie, I
You're
think.
talking about Glass,
Yeah, is it
right?
Glass? Like it gives me vibes of that, like where the person closest to you is actually the villain, or like
Mhm.
I'm thinking the what's the superhero movie or series with my favorite actress? She's got dark hair and very pale skin, and
Oh, Kristen Ritter,
yeah,
Jessica
she's
Jones.
Jessica Jones.
yeah, like the one of the villains in there has like mind control, and so there's a great deal of manipulation.
Yeah.
I can see
David
those
Yeah,
kind of
David
villains
Tennant
making
is the Purple Man is fantastic. That's a great series. Yeah.
yeah, or there's a lot of like psychological issues at play.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good way to kind of look at it as well, where it's not even mind control though. Maybe it's just like hyper intelligence that feels like mind control, that kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah. Like very, very good manipulation. I mean, if you think of, there's a TV series that is, it's a fictionalization of behind the scenes of reality TV, which my wife watched. I watched a few episodes, pretty good, and it kind of shows you how manipulative and dark and unethical the production team can be, and I can see that those sort of tactics working behind the scenes in this too. Even though on the surface it seems very mundane and slice of life and friendly, but then maybe you have this dark side in the production.
Yeah. And like I like that the idea that all of that high-minded producer stuff is stuff that people like there is like maybe one or two people who like will ever see that or will ever uncover that type of thing. And maybe a large majority of people who do uncover that realize that it's like actually this might be necessary, and there's this kind of moral gray with the kind of manipulation that's happening on that high of a level.
Another thing too is with the um, whole manipulation aspect, or like thinking about superhero figures prior to this, maybe they weren't as public, well, certainly not nearly as public facing as they will be when they're on screen for hours every day. Um, but like, I could see that the perhaps more powerful ones are the ones that are less charismatic, even. They were just more driven to help people initially. And that doesn't necessarily translate to ratings when you've got this like capital G good group that's like just trying to help, like I said, old ladies cross the street and stuff like that. But on the flip side, maybe you have the less powerful ones that are more like pranksters, jokesters, more charismatic, who might be pushed more towards the forefront, even though in terms of superpowers they aren't as strong. It's just they've got that charisma.
Right, and if we're in a utopia, then we don't need the world's strongest and most powerful heroes, just the ones that perhaps draw the best ratings. And like you can still have like the taciturn, like hard ass, right? Because you need the archetype, so the like the really charismatic and wild ones pop out all the more.
Yeah, and I could definitely see that leading to conflict, where like maybe the more powerful ones grow a bit resentful of, oh, all of a sudden this like shitty Jubilee-esque superhero who like barely contributed before is getting all the attention, or the producers are creating conflicts between them and making the more powerful superheroes look bad just because they can't really function as well in front of a camera and so on.
That's exactly kind of the underpinnings in The Boys too, like at the upper levels of Vote, or
Yeah.
however it's pronounced,
Yeah.
is that their PR company is the real villain because it like manufactures the whole attitude of them.
Yeah.
Even though there are truly psychotic superheroes, I think they wouldn't be in existence if not for the PR company,
Mhm.
and honestly, they did create the virus that makes superheroes. So there you go.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like we're at a great place to stop and roll in a twist to see how we can shake things up. How do y'all feel?
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
All right. So our twist this time is going to be now add in some time travel. Interesting. What are we thinking about time travel here, folks? Like, my brain immediately goes to the producer is able to grab like the greatest villains and heroes throughout time to see like, oh, it's like it's been reality TV shows. They like get like the all-star characters and they put them on one show. It's kind of like Real World versus Road Rules, or like Bachelor Island, or like Big Brother All-Star Edition. Like it's the one where it's like all of the fan favorites come in, and that's like time travel related. But if we're happy to go somewhere else, I'm cool with that too. I'm just thinking of again, I'm trying to think like a terrible reality TV producer here.
I wonder if we can take that but make it slightly less literal, only because I'm thinking about time travel in the context of film, which for me means rearranging the past in ways that, because you've recorded it, in ways that change the present. Like if I can change your perception of what you saw by stitching the past together, for the filming, I can manipulate your opinions now, which I think our villain is really interested in. So I could imagine like somehow taking footage from the past to create villains from the past and put them in the present. I don't know how that would work literally, but I think there's something you can do something with using the footage as a form of time travel.
Interesting.
You know what I
I was
mean?
kind of, yeah.
Wait, sorry to interrupt, but Daniel, that reminds me of like how studios everything is a remake or is drawing from pre-existing IP. I feel like that's a great parallel that we can draw from there, where there's no new ideas anymore. There's only rehashes and retreads.
Exactly. But you're saying,
Interesting. Yeah, I was thinking almost like a in between what you two are saying, where there is literal time travel, but it's like very minor, and it's almost like a used to like gaslight the heroes and create conflict that way. Essentially changing very, very minor things to skew with their memory and make them act differently, even though what they're doing now doesn't quite align with what happened previously that had been aired, you know?
I love the gaslighting concept
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
it.
I'm all for
Yeah.
gaslighting here, but can you say more about what you're thinking about here, Courtney?
Yeah, it's a I guess a little tough to explain, but like going back to the whole, one of the heroes is allegedly stealing the other hero's favorite popsicles out of the freezer or whatever. Film it in the initial timeline. There's no real drama whatsoever. Everything's fine. There's, no footage of popsicles being stolen out of the freezer. But then like have I don't know if it's the producer or somebody involved in the production kind of go back in time and shift things very slightly to like change the current reactions to it and like make the hero blow up at the other one, accusing them of this
Oh.
theft, that sort of thing. So like keep it very minor, at least initially.
Maybe he can only time travel for like seconds at a time.
Oh,
So
yeah.
he uses he knows that he has the quote unquote proof of what really happened, which is the footage. So
Yeah.
he uses that as a way to gaslight, because what he does is go back in time, slightly alter things so the footage then reflects it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and that's
Yeah.
how he gaslights them.
I had a slightly different idea where instead of like going into the past, maybe this producer can see the future in some way. And like maybe that's what enables them to be able to manipulate as well as they do and kind of steer things in different directions. Because it's like, oh, I can if you can see into the future, if you're get ooh, or if you're getting like tapes from future you and you're able to review the tapes and stuff, maybe that's something that can work as well.
I mean, maybe he can do both. Like
Sure.
maybe he can anticipate. Maybe he has like what do we call it? Like a danger sense that extends to the future. Like he knows ratings are going to drop, in the fall season. So then he makes these little jumps backwards to alter things and create drama. Or maybe he can jump
Mm.
for a few seconds into the future too to see what's going on. That's why he knows about the future.
Yeah. Oh, okay. How about he's able to communicate with himself, but only through like pre-recorded VHS tapes or something like that. And so, like, again, if we're filming this like a prestige TV show, you'll see throughout the season that like, oh, he keeps getting DVDs or tapes or something like that. And it's like he's a producer. Of course, he's going to be getting that. So you don't really think anything of it. And then eventually you might stumble across like, wait, that's him talking to himself. And then that might be like an interesting kind of reveal or way to understand that he's able to communicate through time via these pre-recorded things.
Yeah, that could be as simple as leaving a very short message and then discovering and finding it in the present.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or honestly, like I like the idea of like quantum mailing it to yourself. You know what I mean? Where it's just like, listen, I have like a month into the future. I can send a parcel back a month into the past or something like that. I know there's something kind of goofy about that, where it's like it's a goofy power, but in the right hands, in these particular hands, with this particular like gaslight girl boss gatekeep mindset, where it all kind of comes together. And actually, this seems very formidable now somehow. And you can also include like alternate timelines, like what you and Courtney were saying, where, oh, this footage is from the future, and you can splice it into the past and show people, well, actually they did eat, your food, but like in the future, it's like, oh, it's fine. It's totally different. It's taken out of context, which is again something reality producers do all the time.
You could also have a villain that there's multiple copies of them. And they're all the producers. They're the entirety of the producer staff, which would be kind of wild.
Oh, I like that. Yeah,
Oh, that's really fun. Yeah, that's
that
really
is. Yeah, I like that a lot. Like maybe it's every time, he uses his power to affect the past, he like creates a clone of himself in this alternate
Yeah.
timeline. So he's got like hundreds, if not thousands, of himself running around doing stuff.
Yeah. But at the same time, I also imagine that if there becomes too many of him, then like he starts to become unstable in some way. And I don't mean like mentally, but I mean like reality, he himself starts to like warp or something like that. And so every now and then there has to be like a culling. And so you create this company that is nothing but the same person. But again, they're all like jockeying for power and position just to stay on the timeline and stay in creation. And that to me tickles me in a way, and I don't know why.
And that's kind of fun. And then like potentially what could happen from there is um there becomes an actual supervillain out of that. Like one of the clones refuses to be put down and goes on like some sort of rampage, and um the heroes like actually have to go back and do their heroic
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
when that happens.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, hold on. I mean, we're saying this now. Realistically, this is also how this villain creates like super villains and lackeys. It's just clones of him. It's like timeline of versions of him, and they all have like masks, like like a foot ninja would, or like a cobra like soldier would. And these villains, like the heroes, are just like, whatever. I'm just punching masked dudes. It doesn't matter, and like no one like takes the off the hoods enough to recognize that it's the producer over and over and over again,
Oh,
Yeah,
I gotcha. Yeah.
I think there's lots of options. Just the structure of a producer kind of starting with slice of life to establish your team, and then this utopia, secret dystopia is a good frame. That I think you can structure a
I
variety of
agree.
villains, with the potential.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that this is also a really good place for us to put a pin in it and move on to our second jam of the day. How do we feel about that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All right, cool. So our second subgenre that we're going to be starting out with is going to be, we've got children's fantasy. So I think that's the first time we've ever rolled that. That'll be interesting to see how that kind of goes. Our theme this time is going to be bottomless hunger. Oh boy. Well, actually, there's a couple of ways we can take that, but the focus of our story, of our jam, is going to be someone really important to the setting that almost no one knows about. So, again, we've got children's fantasy with a theme of bottomless hunger and a focus of someone really important to the setting that almost no one knows about. So, Daniel, what are we thinking? I know that you're a big fan of children's fantasy literature. So, why don't you get us started on this particular topic? What do you got for us?
Just so everyone else is clear, I am not a fan of children's fantasy literature.
Yes, that
Although
is
I don't have
correct.
anything against it in particular, I just don't really know anything about it. I was thinking of, in fact, I'm in a Dungeons and Dragons 5e game, and it's a game that's Tomb of Annihilation, and in that game, for your intent to play this is spoilers. If you want to skip over what I'm about to say, but the monster in this is this giant baby that's being fed by a variety of souls throughout the world, and your quest is to obviously destroy this baby. But the baby's dad happens to be a very powerful demi-lich, and so that's the thing that you may face at the end. And it makes me think perhaps the bottomless hunger and the child are related in this child fantasy. I don't know whether it means a grotesque floating infant umbilically attached to a soulmonger, but those are always options.
Yeah.
But I think with children's literature, we can't go too grotesque without it, upsetting the target audience here. And from my thinking of the person in the shadows is that parent, at least in the case of the Tomb of Annihilation, the Lich, who is what's the exact prompts wording? Who's no one knows about, essentially.
Someone really important to the setting that almost no one knows about. Yeah.
Which is the case in Tomb of Annihilation.
Yeah, almost no one knows about that giant baby.
Well, the Lich is what I mean.
Yeah, no, yes, I get it.
It's interesting because it does almost parallel what we did with the superhero thing, where it's like sort of public entity and then a hidden controller behind the scenes, more or less. But I do like the idea that the child is being used by the parent as some sort of, I don't know what it would be. Like we could kind of turn it into a child actor type of thing who's being used by their parent for like money and celebrity.
Well, I mean, we could take that bottomless hunger, turn it into the villain, and then point to the child's emancipation as the kind of story, where part of children's fantasy is about like hopefulness or like some kind of liberation or freedom or like innocence. And we could take that and be like, no, the bottomless hunger is not the child themselves, but rather the parent who like wants more and more from them. So maybe in this sense, the parent is like a quest giver who is feeding off of the heroic deeds of this young child in some way.
Well, could you make it be that there's more than one child, and perhaps one of them is a greedy little monster because of the parent, and so the other one that might be the protagonist or sees this other child as a villain, but in reality, the child is being victimized by the parent. And obviously, that's very complicated from a children's literature perspective. But if we give it from the lens of the child, it becomes about trying to empathize with your friends to understand why they're sad or being disgusting monsters. Finding out what it is that's the real thing behind it. And then you have to make it magical, though. So it's like, if we know from the meta that this is the parent imposing their greed upon the child and making the child greedy, how do we exemplify that in children's literature in a fantastical way?
I mean, my mind immediately goes to Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where Edmund betrays his family, basically, by siding with the witch and makes some not great choices there, because she kind of tempts him, but also offers him like comfort and power to an extent. So it could be kind of similar there. Maybe this could even be like an orphanage type thing for like children of adventurers who have passed or are still out adventuring, because obviously in like D&D and stuff, you got all these adults running around. Where are all the kids? And could make it something there where the owner of the orphanage, or at least one of the staff members, is like trying to get fame and stuff out of them for this, maybe making them put on like plays and shows. And there's at least one kid who gets like really like sucked up in that, but it's ultimately because they want that comfort, they want to be wanted, they want shelter and safety and warmth that this parental figure only gives them when they like comply.
I love that frame. I think that would be perfect.
I agree. I think the idea of an orphanage for adventurers is really brilliant and like such a great framework that, Daniel, I don't know if you're thinking it too, but I'm probably going to steal that at some point. So
yeah, I think that's fun, even from a children's lit point of view, because you automatically set it in a fantasy setting by just having it be this the adventurers drop off point for their kids. So you get all the trappings for fantasy out the gate, but it's has a small locus. It's an orphanage. That's the classic kind of children's tale. You have no parents, and then those kids, I imagine, look up to this orphanage owner, this adventurer, who probably was, maybe the adventurer was a failed adventurer, and so part of his motivation is, trying to justify his existence or return to glory, and so manipulating the children is part of it, and you end up empathizing with the abuser in that way. These are ways you can show all these things, I think, with the interactions of the kids in the place.
Absolutely. And one of the big themes in modern children's literature, I took a class recently, is kind of like the reconciliation with intergenerational trauma or intergenerational issues in general. Let's put it that way. There's a lot of like not being your parents or dealing with the legacy of your parents. And I think that we can do that very easily in this type of world where you're looking, I mean, that same failed adventurer, maybe they were the child of someone who, or the child of very famous adventurers, and they didn't do very well, and so now they're like trying to recoup that loss, so to speak, by being the steward of the next generation of adventurers. And so you have all of these new characters or these new adventurers who are also trying to deal with the legacy of their parents. Like, are they buying into that or are they rejecting that? There's so many different directions that you can take it.
Yeah, I like the idea of a pedigree, because then you can connect the kids to tall tales.
Yeah,
exactly. And then it also can help us set up the kind of, you can have like a favorite or a favored child, or, oh, okay, this is always a fun little trope to play around with. You have the kind of misfit kids, and then you have like the popular clique or perhaps the more powerful ones who keep the other ones in check. And so those ones are favored by like the orphanage owner. You're like, oh, they're so good, they're so talented, you're going to be great adventurers, and then they're also like the bullies who make sure that people stay in check and like don't like get too big for their britches or something like that, and stay in line at the orphanage.
Yeah, I was actually just started reading a comic about one of those schools that quote unquote schools that actually exist, where like so-called problem teens are essentially kidnapped and taken away to like be re-educated and turned into a better, more moral person. And it's horrifying what happens there. What the whole process of like having these kids in charge of other kids, and if any of them screw up, it's everybody's fault and everybody blames everybody else. Everybody's too afraid to say anything because anything can lead to punishment and exclusion and humiliation. And yeah, it's awful. Would recommend checking it out. It's elan.school is the URL for it if you want to read a really depressing comic about that.
That sounds really cool, actually. I mean, like, those types of schools also evoke for me the kind of the schools that indigenous people were put in to kind of like beat the quote unquote savage out of them. Where it's like they're forced to be religious, cut their hair, learn English, and only speak English. Like beat the culture out of them. Like, again, evoking that same kind of horrific vibe. And honestly, I could see a religious aspect or tone being kind of influenced within this thing too, especially because it's an orphanage on top of that. Or, I mean, alternatively, we could just go Little Orphan Annie and have like a Miss Hannigan character who's just like drunk and sings all the time. But I feel like you could take the tone in multiple directions here. All right. And with that, with my Annie reference done for this particular episode, I think that we're at a good place for us to roll for the twist. And our twist this time is going to be, oh boy, this is going to be really fun. Our twist this time is Blood for the Blood God, which yeah, which is a reference to Warhammer. Perhaps Warhammer 40K, depending on which version you're talking about. But oh boy, let's see how we can reconcile this twist. Courtney, obviously I would start with you if we're doing Blood for the Blood God. So instead, we're going to swerve. And Daniel, you'll start us off. what are we thinking about for blood for the blood god to this particular setting?
I think there's an opportunity to redeem the unpleasant orphanage owner. I think in a lot of kids' literature, the villain is also redeemable or misunderstood, or you can see the fault in them, so that way there's a hopefulness to it. So that means possibly introducing another more unquestionably evil thing, which could be something supernatural or monstrous, or outside of the apparatus of the orphanage, and it could be a call to arms for the kids and a call to arms for the orphanage owner to remember that he was once a hero and to do the right thing. So you can wrap it all up in a nice kid-friendly bow.
Yeah, like he had defeated or apparently defeated some pretty massive
Maybe he
entity,
lost to it.
or like he thought that he got it, but didn't actually. So now it's like his time to redeem himself. Maybe his whole adventuring crew, except for himself, was killed by this thing, and he ran away in their time of need, and now it's redemption time for him.
Okay, yeah, no, that totally works. We're dealing with survivor's guilt here, right? Where the previous adventuring party that they were a part of, they sacrificed themselves not to kill the thing, but to like bind it for a number of years, right? And so when they exit this dungeon as the only surviving member, they're like, okay, listen, I've got to make sure that the next group of heroes is going to be able to take this thing down. And so starts the orphanage. I see that working out very well. So again, you have that level of sympathy where it's like not a villain, not someone who's really that evil, but is very harsh because he doesn't want them to lose the way that he lost his friends, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think like there's still an element of him being a bad person, right? Like he's still manipulated these kids, and it's those failures in his person have rotted him to some degree. But I think the magic of this kind of lit is that we're looking for the good in the person in the end, so we can return to those facts that he did have a goal and a quest, and underneath all of the awfulness, maybe there are those reasons why he does this. Like I think mostly he does these things because he's become selfish and awful, but underneath it all, there's those facts of what made him who he is. And I think you have to reflect that in the kids too. So like we have the bully kid who is a reflection of the parent doing all these things. They have to internalize all that.
Yeah, and I think that what you're talking about makes a lot of sense. Like they had the best of intentions, but maybe the fame and the wealth that came with it kind of went to their head and they lost a little bit of sight to that in some way. Again, where you can like see where they made these decisions and see where they kind of lost track of who they were in their heroic heart, so to speak. Yeah. All right. Well, that's cool as shit. I absolutely want to do something like this now. Jesus Christ. Yeah, that I'm definitely putting that one away and I'm going to steal that at some point. I don't know how or when, but that's such a cool idea. I think that's it, guys. I think we're good to go. How do y'all feel?
I think so. Yeah, I do really like this last one, especially. Yeah, I would love to see either an RPG or just an actual kids book done like this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Or I could also see it being like a Netflix animated show that's like 6 episodes long and gets like a massive ravenous cult following. Yeah. Okay. I'm good. I feel like we've done our jam, and that's going to do it for this episode of World Build with Us, marking 5 whole years of podcasting, 5 whole years of world building. A huge thank you to all of our listeners, and a huge thank you to my co-hosts for being here with me for 5 years as well. I literally could not do this without you either. So thank you very, very much for your hard work, your creativity, your joy, and all the love that you bring to the podcast. I love you both so very much, truly. I would not be able to do this without you. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I know I'm definitely the one bringing all the joy to this podcast.
And blood.
Yes.
I said
obviously.
creativity, Courtney. I mean, just because you're
Uh,
finger painting in blood doesn't mean, that's not creative.
as
Uh,
as I'm sure our orphanage owner said, I bring you pain to make you stronger.
Yeah, that's blood for the blood god, all right. Yeah, sure. Yeah, remember, guys, that if you want to see us go on for 5 more years, we need your prompts. You can go ahead and send those prompts over to our website at worldbuildwithus.com. Click those links, follow those instructions. We'll be building your world within a reasonable amount of time. If you want to follow us on social media, YouTube, Twitter, that's where we're at. Go follow us, subscribe, like, all that good stuff. If you want to come chat with us more directly, hey, come chat with us on Discord. That's where we're going to be. Or if you want to make sure that the podcast goes on for another 5 years financially, you can support us by going to our Patreon, where we give you access to sweet, sweet patron-only goodies. That's going to do it for this episode of World Build with Us. Remember that we love you very much. We're going to get through this together. Until next week.